It's just one of those bizarre.
Many people have been dropped to you.
All right. What? That's right. They did not study hard enough. Okay. So let's pick up where we left off. See, there's Ted. I told you he was coming. Today, it is the 5th, April 5th, 2012. So, let's talk about the home front. What is the home front of the United States? What is going on at home that is helping win the war? Well, as soon as we're bombed at Pearl Harbor, we go over and we drop the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, correct? Casey, why not? We just had bombed it. Are we ready to go over there and attack? No, we are nowhere near prepared to do this. We are nowhere near ready. Our military, by the time Pearl Harbor's bombed, is about 1.4 million. It's going to get upwards of 4 million. Our entire battleship fleet has been completely, in the Pacific, has been completely defeated. You don't take carriers unescorted out to war. They are nice and big and very expensive toys, but they sink very easily if you catch them with their planes somewhere else. So you have all sorts of what's called today a carrier battle, where basically you have kind of like the aircraft carrier here, and then you'd have like your missile cruiser here, and this will be like 25 miles, and then you'll have 25 miles here, and then you'll have destroyers out here upwards of another 25 out. So the whole carrier battle group is basically like 100 miles wide. And this is how you do it, because you protect your carriers. Now, so we're not going to rush out and try to defeat Japan when we're not ready. That would be a suicide mission. It's not a good idea. So while we are gearing up for war and getting ready for it, in our military, our civilians are going to have to kind of buckle down. And the government is going to push forward a program called basically series of propaganda that comes up with the slogan, use it up, wear it out, make do, or live without. If you've ever seen a World War II era cartoon that involves a car, you probably noticed that on the tire of the car, the tire is black, but there's a white patch on it. Okay? What is that white patch? That is making do. Alright? That tire has worn out, but they put a patch on it to make sure that it runs still. Okay? If you have a little bit of lipstick left over and you're like, I don't really like that color, I'm going to go to the store and buy some more. Well, what is lipstick made out of? It does have petroleum in it, correct? Yes. Petroleum is needed for the war effort. So instead of going out and buying new lipstick, when you have a little bit left, you are encouraged to what? Use it up. Okay? Use it up, wear it out, make do, or learn to live without it. Okay? Second, the government encourages people to plant their own gardens, and these are called victory gardens. And people are going to grow things of, called, freedom cabbage. Freedom gets attached to all sorts of vegetables during this time period. There's another one on the top of my head that I cannot think of at this moment. It's escaping. But if you need tomatoes, don't go to the store to buy tomatoes, because those tomatoes are needed to send over to our troops to keep them healthy. Plant your own. Plant seeds in your, you got a windowsill, a container. Plant seeds there. Grow your own food so that saves, first off, you money, and second, it keeps our troops from getting what they need. We talked about rationing earlier. I was editing the slide up in my office and didn't save it apparently. So what happens is this doesn't let me save it again. I'll pull from the one I have not saved, I should say. So you know rationing is introduced. Well, here's a major problem that the United States faces. As soon as war is declared on us by Germany, guess what happens? Guess what happens? Germany declares war on the United States, and you know what does that mean? Are they going to come over here and attack us with their army? No. Why not? They're busy fighting over there, but what are they going to be able to freely do now that they say, hey, what are they going to do to stop us? And the answer is, not much. What do we have a lot of that is relatively undefended? Coastline. We have a huge coastline in which U-boats can just come up here, sit off this little port right here. Have you ever heard of this place right here? Oh, Galveston. Have you heard of it? Galveston? Yeah. One of the busiest ports in the world. And take a guess, because Galveston's so close to Houston and so close to Texas City, take a guess what a lot of the things that Galveston exports is. Oil. Is oil needed for war? Yes, substantially. So guess what? These U-boat commanders say, as soon as war is declared, go sit off the coast right here. I'm just going to start sinking me some U-boats. Sinking me some oil. Come with me. You're making Christine's like, what is it? Come on, Frankie, what is it? Give me a second.
Tanker?
Oh, no, I said, we're going to get some jerk. Yeah.
Cargo ships.
What? Cargo ships, thank you. You're going to have these oil tankers that are coming out that are just, they're slow, they're big, they're easy targets. They don't move, they sink. All right? So what happens is they try different things. They start ordering a blackout across the seaboard, which means you cannot have any lights on because these ships are running without their lights on, so they're dark, and at night you can't see them. They're only leaving port at night. So, which means is that they are moving along the coast, and you can't see them because they're completely dark. However, if there's not a blackout on the coast, guess what? As this completely dark thing passes in front of all these lights, what occurs? You see it. So they order blackouts, but still it doesn't do any good. What happened is they figured out, this is kind of neat because this is where history gets kind of personal with you. My mom grew up in Galveston. She lived on Avenue O. On Avenue P, there at the same time, my mom was born during World War I. On Avenue P, there was a man who was a German spy. He owned a pizzeria on the seawall. He would receive reports from German spies in his employ that worked at the Galveston docks that found out when these ships were leaving. They would bring them to him at the pizzeria. He would take them home at night, and he would send them out. He would put up this huge antenna and beam them out to the U-boat commanders out in the Gulf, so they would know exactly what ships had which supplies and that needed to be sunk. Eventually, they discovered it. The United States discovered it, and he was arrested and imprisoned. But that's kind of neat. The street over from my mom was a German spy. In addition, to try to counteract these things, if any of you have ever seen a blimp, why are blimps used for? They're quiet and they see a lot. You don't want to get into a dogfight. They don't move very well. That's a joke. But what you can do with these, they're used for observation. You can see a long way with those. And with U-boats, when they're under the water, you can't see them looking out over the horizon. But when you're off the coast and you're up in the air and you look down, it's easy to see them. So there were blimp bases all over creation. Growing up, my grandfather would always take me out to this place by where he lived in Hitchcock, Texas. If you've ever been there, it's really, really cool. The old blimp base, basically all that's left, are four massive concrete pylons that reach to the sky. And at the time, that was where the Galveston blimp base was, that they would head out and look, and they would come back. Well, it was at the time it was built, it was the largest wooden structure in the world. One time when my grandfather was called out there by a buddy, he said, "You got to come out here to see this. This is really cool." So he goes out there. He goes in. Beautiful, gorgeous, sunny day. No clouds in the sky. Walks into the blimp base, and it's raining. It was so big, it had its own atmosphere. That's how big this thing was. In addition, how many of you guys have ever been who's been to Galveston? Raise your hand. Every Texan's hand should go up. Okay. Giancarlo, go to Galveston. We find some of your buddies go to Galveston. All right. Venezuela, I'm sure they have a Galveston version of Venezuela. Okay. So what happened? Okay, how many guys has anybody ever seen? Let's see what I'm trying to remember. The St. Louis Hotel. Okay. Did I say the St. Louis Hotel? Yes. Yes. Have you? Okay. You know what it's built on? It's built on Old Fort Crockett. Old Fort Crockett, which was the artillery base there. If you walk along the seawall, you'll be going along the seawall, and all of a sudden, you'll come across this area. It's like, whoop, whoop. And that's a real nice area to go out and look, right? Oh, look, it's a nice little place for us to come and just stand and watch. No. Look in the ground. There's little metal things that have been shaved up that are still there. You know what those are? Anti-aircraft defense gun emplacements. That's why that is built. Still today, we have these things there. If you are at Fort Crockett, there's this, and if you go to Rainforest Cafe, which is right next to it, you may have noticed this weird, like, why is that concrete thing sticking out there? It's kind of weird shaped. Well, that is another area where the gun emplacement had been. All right? The problem is, eventually, the U-boats are being too successful. They are taking too much of a toll on us. So the United States, within a year, built a tremendous pipeline from Houston to New York that is 24 inches in diameter. It's called the Big Inch, a humongous building project that from now converts the mode of transportation of all the oil that is refined outside of Houston to get it to New York, to get on the ships that are needing to take it over to Europe, by instead of going on the sea in which it can be attacked, to what? Inland, where it cannot. Now, new technologies also abound during this time. We have talked about radar. We are going to see the advent of the underwater version of radar, which is known as sonar, which instead of using radio waves, uses sound waves. And there's another thing that you probably use every single day. Especially those of you that have already graduated high school, no longer living with mom and dad, because you're out on your own, and you consume massive quantities of ramen noodles every single night for dinner. How do you warm up the ramen noodles? Read your laughter. You know I'm true.
Microwave.
Yeah. How do you warm them up? Throw them in the microwave. Where did the microwave come from? A guy was trying to figure out how to use microwaves for a bomb, a weapon. Kind of Buck Rogers-ish. He had a candy bar in his pocket. He was leaning over, working on all this radioactive stuff. You know, this is the old days. They didn't know radioactivity was that bad for you. And then he stops and he goes to have his break. He pulls out his candy bar and it's squishy. The microwaves had cooked the chocolate bar in his pocket and then turned it into liquid. Eventually, that's going to become the thing that we all use for making popcorn and very little else. But if you remember the days in which there wasn't any microwave, making popcorn was very messy.
Wait, so the new technology was
Sonar, radar, and microwaves. Radar, sonar, and microwave. Now, at the beginning of the war, FDR is convinced that he does not want to pay for this war with taxes. He does not want it to be paid for by raising money on the United States. As a result, what he does is he promotes war bonds. Now, there will be three major drives for war bonds. And basically what this is it is a nationwide program to promote your patriotism by getting the government money. Buy a war bond now for $50. You'll get, in 5 years, the money back with interest. So we're not raising taxes. We're not going to do that. Now, one of the major benefits is that we don't really need to raise taxes because as soon as the United States goes to war, the economic engine of the United States shifts out of the Great Depression, shifts into high gear, and people are going to start having a lot of jobs and have a lot of money. And what happens as a result? If you bring home more money, what happens? Government takes more of it. So what happens is revenue starts coming in and helping pay for the war without having to raise taxes. Now, at this time, probably the worst civil liberties issue that the United States is going to face in the 20th century is going to occur. And that deals with a group that are known as the NISI, N-I-S-E-I. And what the NISI are Japanese of American descent. What that means is that these are second-generation Japanese people. These are not people that have immigrated to the United States and were born in Japan. These are Americans born in Japanese citizens born in the United States. Is that right? Did I say it right now? American citizens of Japanese descent born in the United States. Got it? Okay. All right, this is a technical term of what the Japanese people call them, the Nisi. Reed, you see me walking down the street, never seen me before. What ethnicity would you say I am? What's my descent?
White.
I come from the white? Okay. What country do I come from?
Sure.
Why do you say that? You don't know my name.
Yeah.
I don't have blue eyes, I got green eyes.
Scottish? Maybe.
Scottish! What?
Some European.
Scottish. I do. Part of the performance of teaching. Just wait till we get to we get to Giraud.
Oh dear.
So it's hard, right? Okay, I look at Sam, I'm like,
Somewhere in Europe.
European descent. All right, yes, so we will go with European descent. All right, I am an American. I am a mutt. Okay, I have Russian, German, Swedish, English, blah 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 blah. I'm an American. All right. There's a reason I don't hyphenate my name. You know, I'm not a blanky blank. Well, I am a blanky blank, but I'm not that type of blanky blank American. All right. So what happens now is you see a Japanese person walking down the street. Do you know that there's something different about them? This is after Pearl Harbor. Okay. What we do not know how many spies there are that Japan has sent over here. So what we do is we gather up on the West Coast all of the Japanese, 100,000 strong, the Nisi, and put them in resettlement camps. They lose their houses, they lose their businesses. Nobody is killed forcibly. Some people die, yes, in the camps, yes. But it is not done maliciously. And still people say, oh, it's so wrong, the United States isn't just as bad as Germany. Full blankety blank. We did not torture them. We did not experiment on them. We did not mutilate them. No. Now, here's another thing I want you to think about. If your brother was killed at Pearl Harbor and you see a Japanese person walking down the street, what are you tempted to do?
Beat him up.
Punch him in the face, beat him up. There is a school of thought that says this was done to protect them as well. I'm just throwing that out there. All right.
Makes sense.
What?
Makes makes sense because I mean, like Hitler went Jews for a lot of his problems because some of the Jews had an attack on his land.
Yes. Yes.
Actually, where I grew up, they had like permanent basic left, kind of just like the stone bunkers and stuff.
Right.
Now when we go camping, it's like 5 miles.
Right.
So you see a lot of these underground bunkers that barely stick past the ground.
Yeah, there's a, in Herne, which is just about 20 miles north of us, there was a major German POW camp, prisoner of war camp, that when a U-boat would be sunk and the survivors were taken, we would take them to this camp at Herne. It's been completely rebuilt, and there's now a museum. You know, I should actually have you guys go there. And that would be, and it would be I think a good thing for you all to do, just to see, because what happens a lot after the war is over. A lot of these Germans, they didn't want to go back to Germany, so they just are released and say, well, we'll just stay here, and a lot of them just stayed or moved up. I think a good portion of them, I want to say, moved up to like Montana and that area. All right, but here's the deal now. Let's go back and let's talk about people killing people. Just because we're not ready to go and launch a full-scale attack against Germany does not mean that we are not wanting to give them a black eye for what they did to us. We're not ready to go after them, but that doesn't mean we're not going to go and say, hey, we haven't forgotten what you did to us. And that leads us to the Doolittle raid. So what happens is Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle is given command of a super secret plan to attack Japan. In order to do this, to make it effective, they're going to have to use the B-25 bomber. B-25 bomber is a big plane, as you can tell here. Here she is. Here's one taking off of the USS Hornet. She's pretty big. Typically what happens on a carrier ship, a plane will be stored underneath. And then and when it's time for her to go to the plane to be launched, it will come up on an elevator. The problem is that B-25s are too big, the elevator, so they have to be stored on deck the entire way there. So what Doolittle does is he gathers up the best of the Army's B-25 bomber pilots. He brings them together and says, all right, guys, I've got a super secret mission that I can't tell you about. But this is the deal. You're going to get that B-25 from the point where I mark right here on the runway to off the ground, wheels up at 700 feet. They look at him like he's an idiot. He says, it's impossible. We can't do it. It can't be done. He says, well, you are. You are. And so they get in and they start working on it and they take off. And those who make it get to stay. Those who can't, goodbye. All right, so he gets a good group of people who are able to get off the ground at 700 feet. He says, good. Now do it at 600 feet. They're like, idiot, there's no way. You barely got it off at 700 feet. Because you're going to do it anyway. And they do. They take off, and those who make it to 600 feet are able to do so. Those who can't, they're gone. So now what happens is he says, all right, the group that's left, you're going to do it on 500 feet. They say, there's no freaking way. There's no possible way. We've already cut 200 feet off of the runway that you're giving us to take off at. Well, you're still going to do it. And if you have to modify your plane, what have you, do it. So what happens is they go in, it's kind of like the old hot rodders, where you get in and you say, okay, I don't need this, I don't need this, I don't need this, and they just throw it out. Right? Like when you work on your engine. If you don't have parts left over, you didn't do it right. You put it all back together. You're supposed to have stuff, they always put more stuff on that you don't need. Okay, get some smiles back there that realize that it's not supposed to happen. The rest of you have no idea about cars. Anyhow, so they get rid of guns. I mean, they're pulling out like the side-mounted guns. Those are gone. In the tail, there's a gun. And they pull that out and they put a balsa wood replica. They carve balsa wood replicas, paint them black and put it in the back so it would look like, when they're being pursued, that there's a real gun back there. So they get to 500. He says, okay, doing great. Now 450. God. So they get to 450. He gets 16 different pilots who can do this. He gets their crew. So he takes them from where they're planning the the airfield where they're taking off, and he takes them to a secure location. He says, all right, we're not leaving anywhere. Tomorrow we're getting on board the USS Hornet. For the first time and only time in the history of the United States, Army bombers are going to take off from a naval carrier. Okay? The reason 450 feet is what I've had you go to is because that is the distance you have from the moment your wheels leave taxiing to the end of the carrier's deck, flight deck, in which you will fall into the sea. You have to take off by 450. If you don't, you're dead. And he said, well, where are we going? We're going to Japan's main island. We're going to go bomb Tokyo. And of course, you can imagine they were freaking thrilled about that. All this training. Well, they decided they're going to attack 16 targets in Japan. They leave under radio silence. They get 10 hours away from their launch point on April 18th, 1942, when they are spotted by a Japanese fishing boat. Japanese fishing boat relays their coordinates to the Navy. They're still too far out for the Navy to do anything about it. A destroyer that is accompanying the Hornet sinks the fishing boat. And Doolittle decides that he's going to go ahead and launch the raid 10 hours early and 120 miles further out than where they're supposed to be. Now this is a one-way flight. They're not coming back. There's no way that they could land all these planes back on the carrier, so they're only going one way. So they take off 10 hours ahead of time, 120 miles farther out. They get over Japan right when a Japanese radio program is extolling the virtues of Japan, about how wonderful Japan is and how powerful they are, in that nothing could be done by any American to harm the Japanese home island, that it was protected by the gods as bombs started falling on Tokyo. They have no idea what the heck is going on. The people are frightened. Very, very well they should be. Every single one of these 16 planes hits their targets. Not a single one is shot down. Most of them land in China, where they are picked up by friendly forces. One has to divert and lands in Russia. They are captured by Russian forces. Now remember, we are not allied with Russia. They are our friends that are fighting Germany. They are taken, they're held prisoner for several years. Eventually they are free. Doolittle himself bails out from his plane once it runs out of gas. He's too low, his parachute opens, and luckily he lands in a huge pile of human excrement. Luckily, because it saves his life. It sprains his ankle, but he is convinced that he is going to be court-martialed when he returns.
Wait, why was there just a lot of poop?
Okay, where's it going to be? This is China. They take it and they put it in a place.
Really?
Yes. Yes. Think of how many people are in China. They have a repository where they take, because you don't get up in the middle of the night to go out to the bathroom. You just have basically the equivalent of a bedpan to take, dump.
So where is all that now?
It's still there. China hasn't really changed much in 70 years. You gotta remember, they're a communist nation.
That's yucky.
China is, the China that you know of is a very small area. Okay, when you think of China, you think of, giant, No, it's 4. 4 billion people, but it stretches all over here. It's extremely poor. It is extremely poor. Most people live in huts. But the wealthy, the communist rulers, live in palatial estates, and you have this huge economy. But well, this is something else. But if you read pretty soon, is their economy is very much inflated. It's very much overly inflated in real estate, and it's going to just come crashing to the ground pretty soon. Doolittle, when he gets back, he's absolutely convinced that he is going to be court-martialed. However, when he returns, he gets promoted. He's promoted to full bird colonel. Okay, he's lieutenant colonel. Now he gets promoted to a full colonel for this. It's tremendous success. Japan is freaked out. This is not supposed to happen. This is not capable of happening. As a result of this, when we talk about the Battle of Midway, we win it mainly because the Doolittle raid scares the Japanese people so much that the Army and the Navy bring back a lot of their forces to protect the home island because they don't know where this is coming from. Why? Because what type of planes are they? They are land-based bombers. They cannot come from a carrier because they are land-based bombers. Right? Japan says, and through their propaganda, says that they have captured one. They captured one of the planes and they are holding his crew. If that is so, Doolittle himself said, if that is the way it is, then obviously they captured the 17th plane of the 16 that I launched. Okay? They don't have anything, basically. When news of this reaches Washington, D.C., this assault, a newspaper man asks President Roosevelt, says, where did these planes come from? They're land-based bombers. Where did they come from? FDR knows all about the plane. He says, it came from Shangri-La. What is Shangri-La? It is a mythical place. You know, it's kind of like, I want to say, it's the Hindu version of heaven, perhaps? I don't know. That's a recollection. But anyway, it's a place that doesn't exist because it freaked the Japanese out so much. They have been attacked on their soil, which isn't allowed to happen because they were superior. Now, let us turn our attention to the actual war in the European Theater of Operations, the ETO. Our goal is to defeat Hitler first. Why? England was hanging by a string. If we lose England, we would be fighting a war on two fronts. Okay? We're going to be fighting a war on two fronts anyway, but we're going to put most of our concentration in Europe at this time period. We're going to send the Marines out to the Pacific. But the United States Army and the Navy are going to be concentrating mainly in Europe. Now, why? Who's the bigger threat?
Hitler.
Why?
He's got more
Why
power.
He's got more power, okay. Okay.
We also have he also conquered basically the surrounding countries.
Yep.
Occupying our allies' country.
Occupying our allies'
Everyone.
countries.
It's only a matter of time.
Something else concerns FDR. See, he had received a letter from a guy by the name of Albert Einstein. Familiar with him? Have you ever heard of this guy? Albert Einstein. And he says in this letter, Mr. President, there is a very disturbing lack of physicist research being published in scholarly journals that are coming from Germany. And you're like, what? Before the war, before Hitler came into power, the leading physicists in the world were German. And they were on the verge of splitting the atom. Since then, nothing has been published. Nothing has been heard of from any of these brilliant minds. If Hitler is working on a plan to split the atom, he would have a bomb of staggering consequence. FDR realizes, after talking to his own people, yeah, that could be a problem. So what happens is that kind of the final thing pushes them over. Can't let them have atomic bomb. Now, so we turn our attention to the European theater of operations. And of course, England said, you save us, we'll go help you with Japan. We know Japan is not going to be able to do that much because why? They still have to get a lot of oil. How do we know this? Because who are they importing all their oil from until we cut it off? Us. Okay? They're going to be limited. Yes, it's going to be hard fighting, we know that. But it is something that is going to be able to be achieved. We're going to be able to do it. I mean, we'll be able to go and get them. It's going to take a while, but we will be able to do it. The bigger issue is Europe. Now, the Allies on August 19th, 1942, the United States is not involved in this because we haven't really gotten into it yet, decide to launch an assault on a tiny French port of Dieppe, and it is right here. It's a very small fort, but it's designed to test how strong the German fortifications of Fortress Europe really are.
Sorry, who'd you say it was? Germany raiding?
No, the United States. The Allied assault on a French port. Remember, all of this red is what? All of this, no, it's not Allied. There are no Allied forces in Europe.
All of that's Axis.
It's all Axis. Everything red is Axis. Everything blue is Allies in Russia. Okay? Got it?
That was a big massive red.
It's what?
That was a big massive red.
It is a big massive red. It is a huge massive red. In this assault, 5,000 Canadian forces launch an amphibious assault on this tiny fort. Within a few hours, it is revealed to be a complete and utter disaster. Of that 5,000, 500 are killed. Of that 5,000, 2,500 are captured by German forces. It is not going to be easy to launch an amphibious assault. Because think of it. England to Europe. It's 20 miles. It's the easiest place to attack. However, we know that. England knew that. Germany knew that. So what does Germany do? It makes it their strongest point. Okay? It makes it their strongest point. Complete and utter disaster. Now, this leads us to the United States coming up with a different plan. Actually, let me rephrase that. It comes up with allies coming up with a different plan. What they decide to do, the Allies under General Dwight D. Eisenhower, he's not the Supreme Commander-in-Chief yet. He's in charge of this aspect of the assault. His success here is going to lead him to become the Supreme Commander of the entire Allied forces. We'll get there in a minute. Well, actually, we'll get there next Tuesday. But where do you strike a strong opponent? The weak spot. Okay? You strike them from the weak spot. Where are they the weakest? They are the weakest in Africa. Now, on the tip of Africa, you have territories of French Morocco. France had fallen, and when France had fallen, what had been created? The new government was called Vichy France. Okay? Vichy France. I'm getting my French accent ready. And what happens is we have, at the beginning of Operation Torch, we have American forces landing in North Africa that are going to be attacked by French forces. Even though they are supposed to be allied, because these French forces are subservient to Hitler, they attack us. Eventually, General Mark Clark, an American aide to Eisenhower, talks to Admiral Francois Darlan. Darlan, you will remember from the naval issue in which the Navy was not surrendered. He refused to surrender the Navy. And what happens? England sinks it. As a result, Darlan doesn't want anything to do with England, so who reaches out to him? The United States. The United States reaches out to him and says, hey, you know Vichy France is a made-up government. Draw on your patriotism for the France you know and join us. Eventually he agrees. And gives French forces to the Allied forces. However, the day after that, he is assassinated, which unfortunately means that we in turn have to go to the next highest ranking French leader that is still free, and his name is General Henri Giraud. Giraud is very fond of speaking to himself in the third person. Those type of people are scary. All right. He liked to say, France is Giraud and Giraud is France. Okay? So basically, he was the, embodiment of everything that is French. Unfortunately, to control the French forces, he had to be brought in. Now, Eisenhower didn't like this. Churchill didn't like this because Giraud had been living in England since the war had begun. And when he arrives at the British command post at Gibraltar, he is his usual pompous self. And he arrives, he says, you have brought these forces for Giraud to use to defeat the enemy. Giraud will use them and he will defeat the Nazis. Giraud will do this because Giraud is France. And France is victory. Yeah, right. Right? Yeah. You saw how good they did during the Blitzkrieg. They were great. And so what happens is Eisenhower says, no. We are not going to do what we did in World War I, where we give our forces and put our forces in different nations' armies. We are going to fight as Americans for America to defeat the Nazis. We are fighting as one unit. England has their army, you have your little group over here, and we have our army. But we need you here to command your little bitty group. And he says, no, I will not do this. This is an outrage. I will not. You insult France. Eisenhower says, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. General Clark, would you please take him outside? So, because we're talking a war fight. So he takes him out, throws him outside. Middle of winter. On Gibraltar. Giant rock surrounded by water. Snow everywhere. He's not out there very long until you hear this. They open the door, yes? Giraud says it is okay with me that you fight how you want. So he decided that he was going to allow them to. And we're very gracious that Giraud was willing to do that. Now, the plan here is a three-pronged assault to occur. And this one works. This one works. No, three-pronged assaults never work. This one does. Three-pronged assault in Operation Torch. American forces coming from the United States will land on the West Coast in the Western Task Force. Coming from Gibraltar and from, what is that island right there? Not Corsica. What is it? It's right there. It's not on the map. Can't think of it. Anyway, is it Malta? Yeah, it's Malta. Land here, the Central Task Force and the Eastern Task Force, and they land and they drive east, to knock out the German forces there. Remember, who are they under? Who are they under? They're under General Erwin Rommel, the greatest general that Hitler has. He is a field marshal, which means he is like the biggest general we can have. He controls an entire army. Humongous force. At the Battle of Kasserine Pass on February 19th, 1943, the United States, with 30,000 troops, encountered 20,000 of Rommel's Army Group Africa, Nazi forces. At the Battle of Kasserine Pass, the battle-hardened Germans, even though they are outnumbered, inflict 10,000 casualties on the American forces because they've never been in a hard battle and defeat them. The United States is defeated. However, eventually, the Army Group Africa is defeated themselves in May of 1943. See, Rommel had gotten ill. He'd come down with some form of disease. They don't know exactly what it was. It may have been jaundice. His skin turned yellow. He was very weak, and they decided to pull him out of the desert and send him to get him healthy because you do not want to lose such an asset like him. Now, while he's there, something is going to occur that is going to end up changing the course of the war. We'll get to that as we go back. But they put someone else in charge here. Nazis put a different commander in charge, and they just cut off all supplies because they realized what's happening. The Allies completely push them out and defeat them. Army Group Africa surrenders May 13th, 1943. Now, what? All right. Now, I don't use this map in traditional classes. You'll see in the class all the time because you'll see why. It's very big. It's very very intense. But basically, this is the entire European theater. It is. We'll usually use it the remainder of time talking about TO as a refresher before we get started with the lecture. But let's look at what is going on here at the start of the war. So here is Europe prior to Germany falling to Nazis. You've got the Weimar Republic flag. What happened? Nazis take over. What's this area right here? The Rhineland. Okay. They take the Rhineland. What comes next? What? Not yet. Austria. Okay. Austria is annexed. What comes next? Sudetenland. Then we have the Munich Conference in which he says, I just want Czechoslovakia, and if I take Czechoslovakia back, I'm fine. Italy. George Jackson. The attack on Poland. Poland is split. Georgia takes over Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria. They all become part of the Axis minor members. We don't talk about them because mainly we just don't have the time, and there's really nothing major that happens there. We consider more of the Western Front than anything else. Amassing along the border, you have the 6-month phony war, the Sitzkrieg. Attack in Denmark. Attack in Norway. Somebody had fun designing because I didn't do it. Okay, I didn't do it. I don't have this much time.
It's pretty nifty. I like it.
Pretty cool, isn't it? All right, so Blitzkrieg, Netherlands, moved to attack Belgium, cut off the forces here for Dunkirk. All of France falls, and what is this? The Vichy France. Okay, Vichy France. What's that? Bombing of Britain. Successful? No, not. I missed that one. Where was it? Greece. Coming down to Greece. Comes into Albania. Massive forces invading Yugoslavia. Russia comes in to save Italy's bacon. Attack the forces at Crete. Break the non-aggression pact. That is as far as they get, yeah. Going down from Great Britain, Three-Pronged Assault, North Africa campaign.
Yeah.
That's where we're at.
Tap it some more.
I'll tap it some more later.
I'll know.
All right. So what happens next is now that Casablanca in Morocco has been freed and it is held by allies, FDR does something extremely dangerous. He leaves the country. The USS Texas is on board and he takes her across the Atlantic. Hushed up completely. You can imagine why. And the reason is, why?
Well, we don't want the president to die.
We don't want the president to die, and it's infested with U-boats. As a result, he comes over to Casablanca, Morocco, and he meets with Churchill. Churchill does not. Churchill also invited Stalin. Stalin says, "I can't come. I'm actually fighting a war. What are you guys doing?" Just open up a second front. Attack from the west. They're not at this point yet. We're not ready for that. They actually lay down the plans of what they're going to do and what their ultimate goal is. Here, FDR takes a question from a reporter and scares the crud out of Churchill. The reporter says, "Mr. President, what is the ultimate goal of the Allies?" And Churchill says, "Nothing but the ultimate unconditional surrender of Germany and Italy." Churchill freaks out. He's like, "Oh my God, what the heck are you talking about?" Doesn't say this in front of him. He's like, "It's easy, he gets kind of close." What's the difference between a surrender and an unconditional surrender? A surrender is, I surrender, but I'm going to keep my weapons. I surrender, but we're going to keep our land. Conditional surrenders have a but attached. I surrender, I'm not going to fight you anymore, but I'm going to keep this stuff. An unconditional surrender is you've beaten them down, you've completely defeated them, they're completely humiliated, they can't even get off the floor. You got your foot on their throat and you say, it's not an option, you're done. The problem is, once he says that, the war is going to go on longer. Why? Because Hitler realizes he is not going to have any option save death when it comes, but to keep fighting. That's the only option he has. He has to fight. He is going to devote every single aspect of the military, of the German economy, to pursuing this war. And if it ends up with Germany completely destroyed, so be it. It's better than, being completely and utterly defeated. What?
What was the difference between unconditional surrender?
Unconditional surrender versus conditional surrender. I surrender, but I'm going to do this. Okay? You like a girl. Okay, let's say you like a girl. I know it'd be a stretch, but let's say you like a girl. And the girl, well, let's make it even bigger stretch. She likes you as well. Okay? So you say, Petunia, I love you. I want you to be my girlfriend. Okay? And she says, I love you too, Sam. But I also love Reed. Don't make me choose. Okay? That's a conditional love. Versus unconditional, I love you, I want to marry you, blah, blah, blah. Okay? But do you understand the difference? Do you understand the difference? Conditions, if it's conditional, it has options. Alright? Surrendering, but we keep our army. Surrendering, but we keep our land. Surrendering, but you have to pay us money. Versus unconditional surrender says you're surrendering because there's nothing left. You have been completely and utterly defeated.
So just like giving up all your power to
Yes. Yes. See, the war could have ended once we pushed Germany back to its borders. When we got to their borders, we're like, okay, do you want us to invade and bring war to your people? Surrender now, and we'll let it stay. We'll let it stand. Which is how it's been done every other time in the history of European wars. Okay? Which is what got us into World War II to begin with, because the Treaty of Versailles said, this is what we're doing. It's conditional surrender. You sign this or else we're going to start again. Unconditional is we're coming to your house, we're kicking down your door, we're knocking you to the floor, and we're about ready to curb stomp you, okay? All right? We're about ready to seriously take you out. Is that a better analogy, curb stomping? Throw in a little, what is that? Gears of War? It's got curb stomping in it?
Yeah.
I don't know, I've never played that. My boys do. It's my uncles, and they have nephews. His great nephews are the same age as my boys, and they were playing like Gears of War. And my kids were 8. They're like, "It's the close game ever!" Like, isn't it an M game? Like the worst M game? Okay. So anyway, so we have Africa. Now, what's good about Africa? Africa is a jumping-off spot. We start there. We can invade Italy. Why do we want to go to Italy? Where do we attack? We attack the weakest spot. And we know Mussolini's an idiot, so we're going to attack them because we know Greece defeated them. The only reason Greece got defeated themselves is because Hitler had to come in and save Mussolini's bacon. Okay? So, on July 9th, 1943, the invasion of Sicily is launched. And what's funny is that there's 2 different groups here. From here, I see the problem. From here, you have the English come in, and they head to the port of Messina right here, so they can just jump over. This is Italy right here, it's that close. And over here is the American forces under the 7th Army, who's led by a guy by the name of General George S. Patton. You may have heard of him. Okay? We're going to talk a lot more about him as we get closer. And he has orders to come up here and then swing over and to come to Messina. But he doesn't have any problems. He's just tearing it up. He goes so quickly that he says, you know what? I can come up to Palmero, the other major city in Sicily, take it, and then swing over and still beat the British because they're slow. They were. And he does. And this, of course, makes the English mad, because they're like, he's trying to steal all the glory. And Patton's like, you're darn right, because I'm George S. Patton, and that's how I roll. And Sicily falls. Now, when Sicily falls, Mussolini is thrown out of being the premier of Italy by King Victor Emmanuel III. He overthrows him. The king says, no, you're done. I'm tired of you. You're causing too many problems. Now see, in World War I, Italy had done the same thing. They had overthrown their government, and then what they did is they said, hey, you know what? We're sorry to the Allies. We want to join you. We want to fight against the Central Powers. And what happens as soon as Mussolini's overthrown, Emmanuel calls Churchill and says, hey, let's talk. I want to join the Allies. Well, Hitler can't let this happen because he realizes that if this occurs, all of a sudden Italy is a dagger pointed straight into Germany. He can't let that happen. So he sends forces in to completely take over Italy. Italy falls to Rome. Italy falls to the Germans. Completely takes it over. Now, as soon as Mussolini is captured and is overthrown, Manuel orders him arrested and takes him to this mountain. This is James Bond type stuff. Mountain fortress in the Alpines. The only way you can get up it is to actually climb with picks. Helicopters can't go up there. You can't go because there's not enough air. Planes can't go up there because there's not enough air. But Mussolini is up there. Now, Hitler did not like Mussolini, but Hitler had made a promise to protect Mussolini, and he is determined to take care of this promise and uphold it. So he sends in his best stormtrooper, the leader of his spy network, Otto Skorzeny, to lead an assault on this Alpine fortress, which he does. He gets to the top, frees Mussolini, and at the top, he and his men start going back down. But Skorzeny had arranged for a very, very lightweight, very powerful helicopter that could actually get up there to the top to get Mussolini, because they didn't think he was going to be able to. He's a fat guy. They didn't think he was going to be able to climb down. Okay, so this helicopter gets up there, and it's got space for the pilot and Mussolini. That's it. Skorzeny's a big guy. He's muscle, 250 muscle. And Mussolini won't let him go. He's like, no, you're coming with me, my friend. You have saved me. You're coming with me. So Mussolini and Skorzeny get in this helicopter, and it pretty much takes off, but it's more of a controlled fall than anything else. But he survives. Skorzeny, we're going to come back to it again. If you want to see a freaky guy, he's got a Prussian war scar. He had gotten into a duel with, I want to say it was the husband of one of his lovers, and defeated him. And he's got this humongous scar, makes him scary looking. Yes.
So Skorzeny, was he like
He was Hitler's chief spy, chief commando. We're going to come back to him in a bit. Okay, this is more one of those cool stories than anything else. But what happens is Hitler then gives Mussolini command of a new Italian nation called the Salo Republic, which is basically, now let's go to the next slide and I'll show it to you. Basically like right here. Okay? It's just, we're giving it to you. Salo, you spell that again? Salo? S-A-L-O Republic. Now, next, we launch Operation Avalanche. We've taken North Africa. We've taken Sicily. Now, why do we take Sicily? Because Africa was close. Africa to Italy is close enough, but hey, Sicily's right next door. So we invade Sicily to give us an even closer spot to Italy. Operation Avalanche starts the invasion from Sicily to Italy on September 9th, 1943. They're going to attack Italy and be involved in some very, very horrendous fighting. Eventually, Italy is going to fall on June 4th, 1944. So, Jason, were you thinking I was done?
No.
I've got 7 minutes. Actually, I got 2 minutes. Because you guys are going to evaluate today. Since we entered the war to the end of the war, we engaged in the Battle of the Atlantic, all during this time. The wolf packs, as you know, are concentrating where? Between Greenland and Iceland. Because that's really the range of where our controls can get to. In 42, the war starts turning in our favor, mainly because the adaptation of radar, of sonar to our ships makes it easier to find the U-boats, hunt them down, and sink them. Now, in addition to that, are the depth charges. You guys know what depth charges are? Depth charges are basically bombs that you drop underwater that are housed in I mean, basically they're like oil drums, 55-gallon oil drums. Christina, you're right. Are you a barrel racer? Used to be, but you know what I'm talking about. The barrels, right? The barrels, if you've ever seen barrel racing, that's what it is. Basically those, and they've got a little depth charge on the side of it, depth meter, that you say, I think a submarine's 150 feet below me, you dial it to 150 feet, you kick it overboard. It goes down, and at 150 feet, it triggers a small explosive that ignites the entire thing and just boom, and sends this huge plume of water into the sky. Well, that's not what kills the actual submarine. Underwater, it creates a tremendous water pressure wave. If you've ever been, in a pool, somebody jumps in and does a cannonball. You're close to it, what happens? You get rocked, right? Well, imagine a couple 100 pounds of TNT doing that. What's going to happen? You're going to either crush the sub or cause it to spring a leak to rise up to the surface. And then when it rises up to the surface, it's easily dealt with and shot down. Okay? So the war really starts turning in our favor. In addition to that, we break the German Enigma code, which is how they are sending messages to their U-boats. So we can read their mail. We can figure out where they are, where they're going, and guess what? We can be there before them. As a result, we start sinking more of their U-boats than